Okay, so we're into this fifth tutorial, and at this point, we're going to start looking at selection or deciding whether to run a specific line of code or not. And so we're going to start here by defining the main function, and then afterwards, we're going to execute the main function. All our code is going to be inside here, the main function, thus far. Okay. Now we can use what we call if statements. If statements. To execute lines of code or not execute lines of code depending on certain criteria. And so let me give you an example here. I'm going to make a variable called isHot, like that, which is true if it's hot outside. And when we make it equal to true, make sure you capitalize the T in true and see how it changes color, because if you put true with the lowercase t, then it won't actually assign the value true. It's actually going to give you errors here when you run this, because it's going to be looking for a variable called true, which has not been defined, rather than assign the value true to isHot. And now the simplest thing you can do with an if statement is use a variable here, which we can call this variable that can either be true or false. We call these Boolean variables. Boolean variable, and you can use that Boolean variable in an if statement. So we say if, and then we need a set of parentheses, and then a colon. And inside of the parentheses, I'm going to put here the variable isHot. I don't need the spaces, by the way, before and after isHot, but I put them in there for clarity. And if I press enter, notice how it has indented. And that's because anything that is indented further is going to be inside of this if statement. And all we're going to do is print it is too hot outside. Do anything, which is the case most days in the summer, right? So all we're going to do is, if it's hot is true, we're going to print it is too hot outside to do anything. And so let me just once again try to clarify here. The only way that the print statement on line 9 is going to print is if the variable isHot is true, because the if statement makes it so that this condition has to be, or this variable has to be true, and if it is true, we print. And then afterwards, and just so you can see here, after the if statement, I'll backspace one indentation, and I'm going to print something like have a nice day. And notice how the print statement here on line 11 is not indented to the same level as line 9, which means that that print statement on line 11 is not inside of the if statement. So I'm going to run at this point, and notice that it prints two things. It is too hot outside to do anything, and then have a nice day. And if I set isHot to false, then this variable has a value of false, and the only way that you print line 9 is if this variable is true. And so I'm going to run it, and now notice how it does not print it is too hot outside to do anything. It only prints have a nice day. And that's because on line 11, that is going to print regardless of the value of the variable isHot. It prints no matter what. But line 9 only prints is if this variable in here is true. Now, we can take it a step further, and we can start using what we call, or making what we call Boolean expressions with variables. So let's say that you have a variable that is not simply just true or false. Something like, and I'll just do it here down below. I'll make a new variable, and this is just going to be my my age. So my age, and I'm going to give it a value here, 32, right? And now we can write a Boolean expression, because notice how this is not a Boolean variable. This is not a Boolean variable. a matter of fact, it's an integer, a whole number. That said, we can use variables in if statements by writing a Boolean expression. So I'm going to say if, and then I'm going to go back to the inside of the parentheses here, and I'm going to write my Boolean expression. So if my age equals, and we put two sets of equal signs when we are trying to check for equality. We're trying to see if my age equals something. If my age is equal to 32, I'm going to print perfect age for year 2020. I don't know if this makes sense, but okay. So if my age is equal to 32, that's how you read this. And we call this inside parentheses, we call it a Boolean expression. And I'll write here a comment that it's called a Boolean expression. If this is true, if my age is equal to 32, then I want to print perfect age for the year 2020. Now I know that is hot is false, so this is not going to print. Now let's check to see if perfect age for year 2020 prints. It does, right? Because my age is equal to 32. Now we cannot just check for equality. So meaning if two things are equal, we can also use the greater than or equal to. If my age is greater than or equal to 32, I'm still going to print perfect age for the year 2020. And so it prints, notice how it prints. And that's because it checks for two things. It checks to see if my age is greater than 32 or if it's equal to 32. I can get rid of the equal sign though and just say if my age is greater than 32, print perfect age for the year 2020. And then so that leads to the line 15 not executing because my age is not greater than 32. It's not bigger. If I change this to 40, well, then now it's going to print again because now 40 is greater than 32. And you can also then see that we can put a less than instead, less than or equal to 32. If my age is less than or equal to 32, print perfect age for the year 2020. It does right here because although it's my age is not less than, and that's what that's checking for, it is still equal to. So it does print, and then again, I can get rid of the equal sign and just say if my age is less than 32, meaning we need this Boolean expression is either going to evaluate to true or to false. In this case, it's going to evaluate to false. My age is not less than 32. So this becomes a false statement. And so in this case, it does not print. Now, as far as checking to see, I guess checking for equality, less than, greater than, that would be it, right? So less than, greater than, equal to. What about not equal to? If my age is not equal to 32, well, the way we do that is instead of putting two equal signs when we check for equality to see if two things are equal, I'm going to put an exclamation mark and then an equal sign. And the exclamation mark is not equal to. So if my age is not equal to 32, then you can print perfect age for the year 2020. And right now it is. And so this is a false statement. Is my age not equal to 32? False. It is. And so because it's false, it doesn't print. If I make age anything other than 32, doesn't matter what, 100, let's see, then it will print perfect age for the year 2020. And you can start messing around with all kinds of criteria here. We can start comparing strings as well. So I'm going to come in here I'm going to do a third if statement. If, and I'll just put here equals 32. If, and then I'll put here name equals, and then Octavio, then the colon, and then if that is a true statement, if name equals or is equal to Octavio, I'm going to print name is a, oh, I need to put this inside the double quotes, is a rad name. Okay. Now, if I run this like this, well, then I'm going to have some problems here because it's a name is not defined. And it's always good here to get comfortable with the errors that we get. You are told that on line 17, which is right here, this is line 17, name is not defined. That's because I never declared name, initialized it. I initialized my age to equal 100. I initialized the Boolean variable is hot to false. Before I use the variable name on line 17, I need to initialize it to a value name equals Octavio. Now I can run this, and Octavio is equal to Octavio, right? But notice what happens if I put a lowercase o instead. It does not print. And that's because strings, when you're comparing two strings, which is what we call anything within double quotes, Octavio right here is a string, Octavio right here is a string, perfect age for the year 2020 is a string, anything within double quotes. When you compare two strings, you're comparing every single letter to every single letter. And it does make a difference whether you have uppercase or lowercase. Just like it would make a difference if I put this back to a capital O, but then at the end I put here a space and I run this. Notice how it doesn't print this, because name, is it equal to Octavio? The answer is false. It's equal to Octavio with the space there at the end. And so that's why it makes a difference having these spaces. And so this is our first look here at using if statements to execute a specific line of code or not. So go ahead, finish up the video, code along, and look at the assignment associated with this video.